Yes, we still have a couple of minutes to let people join in. But yeah, the worksheet is kind of nice because it kind of gives you the opportunity for like the cards that we're doing to write down notes underneath each card. But like I said, you can just use your notebook too. It's fine. So I have the cards in the slides. So
Good.
Anybody have any questions before class? Nope. All right. That was easy. Excuse me, I'm gonna grab a sip of water really quick. Hopefully everybody has water too. And because we're actually going to be doing some reading today, if you wouldn't mind doing just really quick world's fastest meditation so that you can kind of and clear your space, you know, the safety first, so that you have a nice clear space to work in. I'll give you a second to do that. While I log into the class. Screen share. Okay, move myself up into the corner. Okay. I'll let you guys go ahead and finish that while I start kind of just the beginning of this. It's just week 7. Yay! We've made it this far. Proud of everybody. And it's how to read tarot and oracle cards. Plus there's a little bonus on when we start off on some mediumship. So that's good too. All right. So we're just going to do a little check-in. I know I've had you guys do this a few times, but I just want to see if you've seen any progression in your abilities. And if you have, go ahead and write that down. We are going to take some even bigger leaps today. So, and I do feel like somebody still has their microphone on. So if you wouldn't mind muting, that would be great. And then let's see, thank you. Self-check. So like I said, write down where you feel that you are currently at on there, or if you've been touching on it, just say touching on this. And we will come back to this again in a couple of classes because we're going to go through a couple of fun classes here. Let's see here. All right, tarot and oracle cards. See if I can move myself up just a little bit more. There we go. What are they? People have been using tarot cards for hundreds of years. They have been using them as far back as the 1440s. Those are some old school tarot cards. I would love to get my hands on some of those, but they're probably disintegrated by now. And let's see, as a divination tool, they work really well. I like people to use these to enhance their intuition. And again, that's kind of like what most of the divination tools are for. They're okay to use when you're first jump starting things so that you can kind of get a feel for things. But tarot and oracle cards are a little bit of a different breed of divination card or divination tools. They are very handy because they can really help connect you with your intuition on the imagination side. Remember, imagination, psychic abilities go like this. So just know that anyone can read a tarot or oracle deck, okay? If they have a book. How many people do you know that claim to do tarot card readings and they bust out the book and you're just like, are you actually reading or are you just literally reading a book? So, because there's definitions that the artist has created that, you know, they put into a book to help you. But I truly believe that your intuition is much more powerful than the words that the artist came up with. So yes, so the way that I will teach you to read the cards today is intuitively. I call tarot cards crutches, and it's okay when you're learning to walk to use some crutches. Okay, so I have been teaching this particular tarot card reading technique to my students for years. And though everyone has varying degrees of abilities, overall, they have all had amazing results. It's just fun to see what you can actually do with the cards when you're using your intuition. They are a great tool for jumpstarting your intuition and building confidence. So it's great to use, what you're receiving. Sometimes it's good to put little messages that you receive in your confidence log. So, but they should only be used to help you during your development stage of building your psychic abilities or your intuitive connections, not as a crutch for your readings. The goal is to get you to a point where you no longer need any tools. Okay. A pure reading should be done without cards, simply using your abilities. I sound like a broken record today. For today, however, we should have a little fun playing with the cards. That's the goal. The whole point behind this is to enjoy it anyways. If you're not enjoying it and you're not having fun during your growth process, then there's a lesson that you need to look for and find on why. Okay. Tarot. So some information about tarot cards. Tarot decks are structured and predictable. If you learn the common Rider-Waite, which is the most common style of tarot cards, then you will most likely be able to read any other tarot deck. Tarot decks are very consistent. They generally have 78 cards, minus rare independent versions. Every once in a while, somebody wants to get creative and call it tarot. It really should be called oracle cards if they do that. So tarot cards consist of 22 major arcana cards and 56 minor arcana. The major ones usually are numbered. The minors usually have like stars and swords or pentacles. Pentacles can also be coins, wands, cups. So there's usually 4 suits. So they're usually divided into that. So it kind of keeps it consistent. Some people like using a standard deck of playing cards. My great grandmother used to do that too sometimes. So standard decks of playing cards are actually based off of tarot cards. Isn't that ironic? Modern deck of playing cards is a descendant of the tarot. Swords are spades, wands are clubs, hearts are cups, and pentacles are diamonds. So diamonds are pentacles. The Joker is the Fool in comparison to a tarot deck. Anybody that knows about tarot already, and if not, then just you'll have this to refer back to. And court cards are like the King, Queen, Jack cards. Okay. Now on to oracle cards. I just thought that these were really beautiful oracle cards. These have those words at the bottom that we were talking about. I'm not a big fan of the words, but the artwork is just gorgeous. So, okay. Oracle card decks are structured independently, and each follows with its own set of rules. They can have any number of cards, but there are usually between 36 and 64. So they can really vary in the size of the deck, depending on what the artist does. So oracle decks rarely ever have suits, kind of like the playing cards where we have the clubs, the diamonds, the hearts. They don't have suits. They usually are numbered. So they do tend to number them so that you can reference them more easily in their guidebooks. Like I said, the artists will generally, sometimes a writer and an artist will team up and they'll create these decks, but usually one person writes a description for it, and that's their impression of what the art is, or the artist is trying to pull the impression from what the writer did, or like sometimes they're one and the same, but they do tend to lend themselves towards a tarot-like theme, just because they, when you get really down to brass tacks, cards are cards. While most have a free-flowing artistic style approach, they do tend to have a little consistency where most of them number their cards. Some oracle decks have the name or meaning of the card written right on it, where some are just artistic. I don't know if you've noticed different cards. Like I said, these have some writing at the bottom. Some of them are just pictures. So I prefer my students use the artistic version so that you cannot quote unquote cheat or be misdirected by trying to read the card using the existing descriptions or the words that are written on them. Most beginners like to refer to the guidebooks for information where I feel that can interfere with your natural intuitive and psychic connection. If you try to use the guidebook, I strongly suggest that you feel your cards out, not read the manual. Is one better? Tarot versus Oracle, neither is better than the other. They are just a different format, and you just kind of have to find whichever style of cards that you like to work with, whatever you're personally drawn to. It'll help you connect better. It really will. It'll help you emotionally connect better if you pick a deck that you're just like, ooh, I can feel that, you know? I always tell people, when you go into a store and you're trying to pick a deck of cards, you can do this little thing, and this isn't written in here, so I'm just going to show you. You can do this thing. It's called, like, it's almost like a human pendulum is what I call it. So if you hold them next to your heart and close your eyes and kind of take a deep breath in, and you're standing up. So I'm not going to stand up. I'm just going to show you from a sitting position. But if you are drawn, if your body and your energy are drawn towards that deck, you will lean forward towards it. This works with rocks. This works with all sorts of stuff, books, food. But for this example, we use tarot cards. If it's not the right deck for you, you'll find yourself going away from it because your body's trying to say, no, that's not the right energy. So it's just kind of a fun test to use when you are trying to feel out your own new deck of cards. So trying to find a deck that has a lot of variation in the art is important, so that you can avoid the major focal points, obviously, like we were talking about. This will help you avoid getting stuck on one item or concept that somebody else came up with, not your intuition. The goal is to have a deck that complements your imagination and your intuition. Let's see. Okay, reading. Kind of just jumping into things today. So when you are reading with tarot and oracle cards, before you ever begin to read with them, you want to remember safety first. How do we do safety first? World's fastest meditation and clearing your space with white light. You always want to make sure that your space is clear before, you know, that you are clear and that your space is clear before you read with somebody, so that way you're not picking up anybody else's kind of icky stuff. Also, if you're doing something like the shows that people go to, you know, have you ever been to those shows where there's a bunch of readers and you sit in this little tiny cubicle of a booth and you're supposed to block everything out and actually read for somebody? By clearing yourself, doing world fast meditation, and by clearing your space, that will help alleviate other people's energy coming into your space. It will also help by doing that in between each client, if you're working with clients in that direction, because you want to clear the old energy out so that it's fresh for your new client. Before we begin, I want you to understand that this process teaches you a very simple, straightforward way of reading cards. I am a firm believer in work smarter, not harder. So we will be covering today a 5-card, I call it a mini reading. It's a great way to jumpstart things so that you can kind of get a feel for things and how tarot works, or oracle, same difference. It really doesn't matter which deck you have. I can't say that enough, because we're focusing on the artwork in it. We're not focusing on the words or the actual structure. I do hear somebody else's microphone still on. So hopefully somebody can turn that off. Thank you. So remember, when I teach you a method, it is simply a guide for you to start off with. This is just a jump starting point. You'll find your own way of doing things. And this is just so that you can kind of get a feel for things and grow your intuition and find your own unique path to how you do your readings. The goal, like I said, is not to use cards at all. This method is to teach you to connect and trust your intuition and psychic abilities. Connecting with your own abilities, creating that self-faith is so important, which is another reason, like I said, that it's good to keep a little note. Like, if you're proud of yourself for something, you know, write it down. If you predicted something, write it down. If you have an odd thought, you write it down, and then all of a sudden you go back and you're like, whoa, that's what that was. All of this helps kind of build that positive ego and that self-faith. Okay. This will formulate your reading and show you the pattern when it's complete. So as we go through this exercise, please keep the notes on each card that we go through. I really want you to start seeing how they flow, seeing the connections between the cards. Okay. I will, for this example, because obviously you guys are not reading for other people today, I'm going to have you do this for yourself. When you're doing a reading for yourself, the best thing that you can do is take a step away from yourself and pretend that you're reading for somebody else. Okay. So even though you are reading for yourself, I want you to be able to take a step back. And as you pull the cards, I don't want you to think about it as reading for yourself because you'll get too emotionally involved in your own reading. I want you to think that you're reading for a friend so that you can get a clear reading, and that way you're not getting any interruption between emotions and your own situations and what you're reading. At least do the best that you can. As you begin to, so I want you to shuffle your cards. Okay. Some people, split them and shuffle them. I like to keep my cards all one direction. So I tend to, I'm going to show you this real quick. I tend to shuffle like this. It doesn't damage your cards as much. I've had this deck for 25 years and though it's a little loved. I don't know if you can see that or not, but it's got a little water damage on different points, but it keeps the cards flat when you shuffle like that. So as you begin to pull cards, and don't do it yet, but as you begin to pull the cards, separate your mind from this reading, like I said, being about you, to the reading now being for someone you haven't ever met before. This is not you you're reading for. This is somebody else. Okay. Now, when you shuffle those cards, so go ahead and continue shuffling your cards. I want you to shuffle until you feel like you've shuffled enough. And now have one question in mind. Okay. Just think of one thing that you can, off the top of your head, is just something you want to find out about, just something simple, not a complex question. Okay. Sorry, allergies. But shuffle those cards. And then as soon as you feel like you've shuffled them enough, then I want you to set them down in front of you. Okay. And remember, this reading is not for you. It's for your BFF or for somebody you completely don't even know. All right. It's just not you. By changing your perspective on who the client sitter is that you're reading for, this allows your emotional separation and the ability to have a cleaner reading. I do not teach reverse card readings because the way that I teach, you want to be able to see the picture upright because we're looking at it for the artistic perspective, not for the structure. So think creative, not structure. Okay. As you draw your cards after shuffling, please make sure that when you place them down that they are all upright, because like I said, I don't do the reverse, just at least for this. You can change it up however you want afterwards. For this method, you'll be reading them like you would read a book. So place them starting on your left and systematically to the right as you draw each one. Now, I don't want you to draw yet. I'm just explaining this method to you right now, okay? Come on, computer. There we go. You will be reading each card, not interpreting them. Come on. Read from the heart. Okay. Now remember, like I said, this is where we want to draw that energy from. We want to read from the heart and allow our brains to translate that energy. Okay. That's where we do the midbrain. If some of you would like to, you're welcome to close your eyes and do the left and right eye movement exercise really quick so that you can kind of get that midbrain centered, and you're letting yourself know by doing that you're here. I'm going to go and I'm going to actually use my abilities. Okay. So maybe just take a second to do that left and right eye movement and then focus forward so that you can kind of activate that. Okay. So when we do the reading, you're going to feel the emotions, see what images pop up for you, feel the card. Like I said, some of you may be more visually inclined, so you might have images pop up. Some of you might be more hearing inclined, so you may hear words or see words or just feel it, like where you're downloading information. Okay. Any messages that come through when you're working with your cards, this is you connecting to your intuition and your psychic abilities. Okay. That's what the goal is. So trust your intuition and remember that our psychic and intuitive abilities can also feel like our imagination. So trust them, trust your messages and run with them. Don't shut them off because it might feel like it's your imagination jumping in. Okay. Remember, stay nice and clear when we're doing this. You want to take the stress out of the reading for yourself by remembering that you are just practicing. That's what we're doing. We're just practicing. Okay, we're going to cover the approach to the card reading one more time really quick. Emotions or feel the emotions of the card the person or the subject, okay? You want to feel the person that's in front of you. Now, I know that this is us taking a step back from ourselves at the moment, but when you're sitting with somebody, you want to actually feel their energy, connect with them, okay? And then translating those feelings, impressions, messages into words that you communicate to the client sitter. You may feel an emotion and not know how to translate that. Okay. If you can't, see if it connects with a word or an image or a number, anything along those lines. We do not discount things that come through because we are the messenger. We are not the interpreter. Okay. Further evaluation of the card and energy to expand upon. So as soon as you connect with your card, then you want to really feel the energy of what's going on between the sitter and the card. Okay. And then we're going to add further cards to expand the session. So here we go. Everybody ready? Draw your first card. All right. So keep your deck off to the side. I want you to draw your first card and I want you to put it to the left, like under your left hand. Okay. We're going to read just like we're reading a book. So we're going to read left to right. Okay. So place it to your left and remember that this card is a representation of the client or sitter or the subject or question. So this is the main card. Okay. Your first card, and we'll use this card as an example. So if you are sitting there looking at your card, I want you to remember that this card is specifically around the person that the question is about. This is the subject or the sitter, okay? That subject could be about the client or sitter, or it could be that they asked about another person or an issue or problem. So say I'm curious about what's going on with my husband and I pull this card, right? Well, then I'm looking at, I want to interpret the card based on what I'm feeling on that. If that's for yourself. And like I said, if you're drawing for a client, you have to just listen to your intuition. So when you're looking at your card, I want you to really focus on the images in your card. If there's any words, cover them up. Use your thumb, just cover them up like this, okay? And I want you to, or, if you have them on the table, just kind of put your hand over the words so that you can just sit there and focus on the image in the card. Okay, I want you to really feel what's going on. Don't just look at the pictures, but feel what it represents for you, okay? Example, I feel like this card represents blank for me. So like, I'm going to just do my own little reading with you while I'm doing this. Like for me, I feel like my card represents my husband. Okay. So that's what it feels like to me. And then, feeling out like, what are the emotions that you get? I want you to write all of this down. I want you to put first card on your notes and on the worksheet. If you have that printed out, it says first card is about the person or subject, and then write down your impression of your card. I'm going to be quiet for a second while you do that. Okay. Again, what are you intuitively feeling from the card? What messages did you receive from it? Even if it just feels even if the message feels a little crazy, just go ahead and write it down. It's okay. Now we're going to move on to the second card. So you're going to place your second card immediately to the right of your first card. Okay. Like I said, reading like a book in America, left to right. I know some countries read right to left, but we're reading left to right for this class. So the second card presents the energy from the past through the present on the first card. So let's just think about this for a second. If the first card represents, X, like it represents maybe a person or a situation that's going on for your client. The second card will represent the past, the energy of the past from that same subject. Okay. And again, you want to feel your card, cover up any words and just look at the art and see what you emotionally feel, what you're picking up off of it. And like I said, don't discount anything that comes through. And I want you to write down as pure as you can. Remember to keep yourself out of this situation. This is not you writing about yourself. This is you writing about the person that you're reading for. And again, it's, I feel like this card represents blank for me, and it's for the past. So whatever happened in the past for the situation. We're going to kind of go through some of the same questions on each card, where what are you intuitively feeling from the card? And what messages are you receiving? And then make a little note on how you feel like it relates to the first card. Okay. I'll give you a minute for that. For those of you that are watching the recording, you can hit pause. Okay. Excuse me. Moving on to the third card. So the third card represents the story, what is currently happening and what could come to be. Okay. So draw your third card and place it immediately to the right of that second card. This card can show you the energy of the present through the future of the question or subject in the reading. So the question or subject in the reading, we're relating it to the first card, the very first card that we drew. That's why that first card is so important. And then second card was the past of the situation or the person. And the third is what's going on right now. You know, not only what's going on right now, but what is it looking like it could morph into? Okay, this is you're really connecting to your intuition at this point. Again, you want to use the example, I feel like this card represents blank in relation to what's going on right now around the subject. So what are you intuitively feeling from the card? What messages are you receiving from it? And then as we're kind of creating this storyline, how does it relate to the first and second cards? So just make a couple notes really quick on that, and we'll see how that story starts evolving. Again, you want to focus on that artwork, really sink your intuitive abilities into what you're feeling off of it. Now, at this point, you should begin to start formulating a story or scenario that begins to create a flow to the reading. So there's going to be a flow to the cards where it starts off with your first card, moves into the past, going into the present, and now we're going into the fourth and fifth cards. So go ahead and draw those fourth and fifth cards and place those immediately to the right of the third card. These cards are what I consider to be further description cards or future cards. They could intuitively or psychically show you more details about the future involved with the reading. So a lot of times when people do cards, it's because they're looking at what's going on. You kind of want to get a feel for the past on what happened with the subject or the situation. then you're like, okay, I'm going to pull a card so that I can kind of see what's going on right now with that. See how we're building a story. And then now we're going to, now that we know what's going on right now, let's see how it kind of moves into the future. So that fourth card can be either a further description of what's going on right now, or it can give you a little bit about what's going on right now, but what could be moving into the future. Now, when I say future, I mean that term very loosely. As I've said in other classes, I believe that the future is only shown to us if we are supposed to share that with our client or setter so that we can help them to see what will happen if they keep going on that same path. Okay, so write down everything that you're picking up off of the fourth and fifth cards, any messages, any intuitive feelings, And remember, you're reading for somebody else, you're not reading for yourself. So try to get that air of emotional separation. Okay. I'll give you a minute. Like I said, write down everything that you're feeling. This will be much easier to do without me talking in the background afterwards, so you can practice this. And it's a lot easier to read for somebody else too, because then you don't have your own emotional blocks kind of jumping in, trying to say, oh, this is what's going on. And you're like, no. So when you're working with somebody else, you do not want to ask them their question. You do not want to ask them to tell you what's going on, what they were wanting to know, because that will distort your reading. You really, really want to trust your own abilities, your own intuition. Okay. You're empathically picking up on your person anyway, so you can kind of feel stuff that's going off of or that's coming off of them energetically. So you don't need to ask them. As soon as they jump into the reading can get distorted. So the best thing you can do when you're learning is to read without them talking. And these are just mini readings anyways. So, have a little bit of fun with it. You want to make sure that as you're doing this, that you're practicing building your storyline so that you're reading the cards. Just like when you go into an actual session without cards, you want to be able to flow. You want to have a flow, which is one of the reasons that I do teach tarot as an intuitive tool so that people can learn how to have that flow in readings with their intuition. Okay. So there should be a connection between each of the cards as you have read them for the same person or subject. When you are reading for someone else, the session may not always make sense for them. Okay. Do not take this as a personal ding against your abilities. If something does not make sense to this happens all the time when things don't make sense. So they'll look at you kind of like this guy with the funny hair. Okay. Often clients or sitters will not understand a session right away. They may get frustrated. Do not take on that energy. The best thing that you can do is explain to them, hey, being honest is the best policy. Honesty is the best policy, right? But remember, delivery is important with honesty. Sometimes when clients don't know what's going on in a session, it's because it hasn't happened yet, or they have reading amnesia. Okay. Where they're so vested into the session that the dots don't connect with their memory centers until afterwards. I cannot tell you how many times I've been in session with somebody and they sit there and they just start looking at me like this. And everything's just like whoosh. And then like right afterwards, they will explain to me, oh, that's what this is. That's what that was. Oh, now I see. My cousin Mary was actually my cousin Mary. So it happens very often. So do not be frustrated by when that happens. That's why I'm explaining to you in advance. This is extremely common and still happens regularly to me with clients. Eventually, they will contact me afterwards when everything starts to make sense. Sometimes the reason it isn't making sense is because it just simply has not happened. And that's your job, is to deliver messages, not to fix readings for them. Okay. That's why I always tell them, write it down. So other times, the reason the reading isn't making sense is because the information that you're relaying simply has not happened yet. We just covered that already. Come on, little mouse guy. There we go. This is where I have my clients or sitters write down notes to reflect on. Especially if there was information that didn't make sense at the time, I will always have a notepad ready for them. Even though I suggest that they bring one, I will always have a notepad ready for my clients so that way they have something to write down the stuff if it doesn't make sense. Also, in your first reading, remember that you are practicing. Practicing. Okay. You will, practice makes perfect. Practice does not make perfect. Practice makes experience. Okay. More experience you get, the more you'll recognize your messages, you'll recognize different things that come through. You'll start being able to read energy better. These things will become more fluid. They will become easier for you the more you do it, because it becomes second nature. Just like when you're reading a book, when you first read a book, Jane meets John. That's a horrible example, but when you're first reading, it's like you're reading 3-letter words the whole time and you're excited you can do that. Next thing you know, you're reading a novel because your experience and it flows, right? Same concept. But when you are first learning, I cannot emphasize, I've taught this to several students where I highly suggest that you do not record sessions. I don't like it when people are typing messages through Facebook as a reading or emailing back and forth with somebody as a reading, especially when you're learning. Okay. Um, it's just better to be able to have either, like, if you're going to do Zoom or something like that, that's fine. At least you have a personal connection with somebody. But if you're going to read for somebody, keep it very short. And like, especially, like I said, especially when you're practicing. So a practice session should not be any longer than 5 to 10 minutes in length. So this is to protect you and to help you build your abilities and to build your self-faith. Because sometimes if you're doing a mini reading, sometimes you'll start, when you're first learning to read, there's a little bit of anxiety. There's some butterflies, there's some nerves. It's like, am I really doing this? There's, I can't even remember what it's called, but there's a syndrome for it where you feel like a fraud. It's like fraud syndrome. It's a legitimate, normal feeling when you're learning to read because you don't know what you're sharing. So you have to build that confidence and that self-strength, and that self-faith to be able to feel confident in delivering your messages, especially if they don't make sense to somebody. Okay. In the 5-card mini reading that you just did, you were to read as if you were reading for someone else and then journal it. You can continue to practice this method as it will help you to develop the ability to do distance or phone readings also. Okay. There's a lot of madness to my methods. When you get a chance, practice your 5-card mini readings by reading for a new person. So it's okay to read for a friend, especially if you're comfortable with them. But if you decide to jump online, there's actually groups and stuff where you can go online and read. Like I said, I'm just apprehensive. If there's a recording going on, I'd steer clear of it. If you're reading while other people are reading, I would steer clear of it because you don't want to be picking up on what somebody else is picking up on. You want to have a clean reading. So just one-on-one. One-on-one's great practice, helps you build some confidence, helps you stay relaxed while you're doing that. Okay. So find somebody that you trust and you're comfortable with to practice on. And like I said, just remember it's practice. If and when you do go to do a longer card reading, remember to read the cards like a book. So just because I taught you only to read 5 cards today, that does not mean you cannot continue on to as many as you'd like. You can keep reading. Once you have your connection, the cards just become almost like background noise. So you can look at them and then all of a sudden you have your intuitive impression, or you may even have it before you draw the next card. That's a lot of my students will tell me, they're like, I knew what it was going to say before I even drew the next card. And the next card was exactly what I was going to say. So your reading should always flow both energetically and intuitively. Remember, intuitive readings. That's what we're practicing. That's the whole point behind the cards. It doesn't matter if they're oracle cards or tarot cards. It's all about looking at the images, trying to connect, use your imagination to let it kind of flow, and then feel what you're picking up on, and then share your messages. We always want to share messages ethically. One of the things I did not write in this class, which I should have put in here, and I pulled this, is what happens if you pull this card, the death card. Okay. Does it mean someone's going to die? Not usually. Hopefully not. Usually what it means is that there's an ending to a cycle for somebody. So say you're reading about someone's job and you pull the death card. A lot of times that just means that whatever their job is probably coming to an end, or it's coming to where there's an end of what's happening and maybe there's a new fresh start coming after that. Okay. So remember, ethically deliver your messages. You don't want somebody walking. I cannot tell you how much damage control I've done for readers that have gone out not knowing what they were doing. And they've told people that they were either going to get in accidents or they're going to be hurt, or I see you getting a broken arm, all these horrible things. And I'm just like, no, if you see somebody getting a broken arm, you tell them to, instead of telling them, oh, you're going to have a broken arm, you say, I feel like you might have something going wrong with your arm, maybe you should be careful or get it checked out by a doctor. That's ethical delivery and kind delivery. Remember our 3 C's where we talk about, caring, consideration, and compassion? We always want to read that way. That's what makes you a good reader and an ethical reader, okay? When working with your abilities, so now that we're jumping into beginning to use your medium abilities, which you can't say the word your because it's behind my face. When working with your abilities, you are in effect learning a new language, okay? It's learning to translate energy. It really should be another language. It kind of is. So that's how we're going to view it in this class. First, you exercise the ability to utilize your imagination more frequently, okay? Let those daydreams keep a flowing. Will keep you connected with your 6 senses and help them grow. Hence the music exercise from the beginning of lesson 6, communicating with the other side. Remember the music exercise that went horribly wrong for technical issues? Then we figured out kind of. If you go to the recording, it's much better, by the way. However, what that music does is it helps your imagination kind of go woo, and it lets you it makes you comfortable enough to receive messages, okay? You will want to grow your understanding of emotions and how they relate and translate for you. We did discuss this in another class, but I really want you to remember to recognize your emotions. The more that you remember to recognize, the more you're going to be able to translate for other people. Okay. So as you begin to recognize and receive messages, there will be an element of interpretation that goes along with it. I use that term interpretation loosely. We are not interpreting, we're translating and sharing our interpretation of that translation to somebody. When you share something with somebody, it's best to not say, this is what this is. Better to say, I feel like this is what's going on, okay? Guides and spirits from the other side do not generally just sit there and verbalize in a 5th sensory way where you can hear in your ears. Almost never. That's not how they talk, okay? They like to throw you information in many different ways. That is why there's so many clairs or 6 senses that people talk about, like seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, physical sensations, a knowing or a download of information. That is how they like to communicate. They like to give you messages and signs. And sometimes when they talk to you, it's like having a really interesting conversation with yourself in your head. Sometimes they will use your own memories to get you to relay the information they're trying to get across. You are the one that needs to learn how to decipher and relay the information in a way that makes sense to the person or people you're working with. You are the one that's working from here, working from here, working from here. You'll become really good at multitasking. It's like listening to 2 conversations at the same time, okay? So when we're using our medium skills, you really have to relax and let things flow, okay? I know that I'm throwing a lot of information at you. Hopefully you will rewatch this class. It does sound like a lot of pressure with all the things that I'm telling you, and it can be, especially if and when you find yourself becoming overwhelmed or confused. So when that happens, the best thing that you can do is take a moment, reflect on what's going on. If you find yourself frustrated, one of 2 things is happening. Either the person that's communicating with you on the other side is giving you that sensation of being frustrated as an emotion you're supposed to translate to somebody, like, hey, are you frustrated right now? Because I feel like this energy of frustration is coming through. See the difference? So just because you're feeling it doesn't mean you are feeling it. Might be a message that you're supposed to translate, okay? Other times, if you're feeling something, and like I said, and you don't understand it, go ahead and take that moment. Just tell the person that you're sitting with to wait briefly while you refocus. Tell them that something's coming through that's confusing or that's not making sense to you. So you just need a moment to take a breath and just go, fill yourself up with that white light. and you don't have to be as loud as I was. You could do it much quieter. But yes, so, and then, like I said, world's fastest meditation, I have gotten it down to where I can take 2 deep breaths and clear my whole self and have all that energy clear. If you feel like you are emotionally getting tied to a reading, or, because sometimes for those of you that have tried to read already, I don't know if you've ever noticed that when you are working with somebody, that sometimes this little bell will go off in your head and you're like, oh, that's me. I'm getting frustrated, or I'm not understanding something. Those are those times when you take a deep breath, because it's okay, because you need to remember that you are still human, and that this is it. When I've done readings for people, they're like, you make it look so easy. And I'm like, I've done this a long time. It's easy because I've done this a long time. It is a lot of work when you're trying to hold 3 conversations at the same time. You remember to set the boundaries and set the outline and the structure of your reading. When you're working with spirits on the other side, I will actually tell them, it's not your turn yet. I will literally set up a session and say, okay, there's 10 people in here. I can't hear them all at once. So they have to take turns. So go ahead and remember, when you're working, just like I said, you're starting off with the tarot cards as an intuitive tool. So that's good, or oracle cards, and use that to grow your intuition and your psychic connection with people. You'll start noticing that the cards, like I said, become background noise. Again, with the emotional involvement, if you find that you are becoming too emotionally connected or involved with your clients during a session, that's a no-no. You need to remember that you are simply the messenger and should not put your own opinions, emotions, or advice into a session if you find yourself doing that, because again, we're all human, so we're not perfect. Sometimes you'll find yourself emotionally connected to the actual client or sitter, not just emotionally connected to the reading. Okay. When you do that, if you find yourself giving your own advice, one, hopefully you have been coaching or counseling people for a long time. If not, then at least advise somebody, this is my opinion. I am very clear with my clients, because on that ethical boundary thing, people come into you in a very vulnerable state. Most people don't go and get readings unless they have something going on that they need to find or seek knowledge for. So if you have somebody that's in a susceptible emotional state sitting in front of you and you're reading for them, even if this is a friend, it still makes a difference. You have to try to keep your own emotions out of the situation. That's the right way to do this. Okay. And again, if you get stuck and you find yourself doing something like that, you can always be honest and backtrack. Say, you know what, that was actually my opinion. That wasn't from your guides, or that wasn't from anybody else. That was my opinion. People appreciate honesty. And again, you can always do that pause. It'll help you. The world's fastest meditation always helps you to mentally clear and refocus on what you're receiving, not what you think you should tell them. I have had clients that were in the middle of trying to decide if they want to get divorced or not. I've been through divorce. Sometimes this triggers things. So you have to separate yourself from it. I have literally watched other psychics, and I put the in quotation for a reason, work with people and get personally, emotionally involved. I've sat there and watched this happen, it can really make a mess of a session. Plus, you don't want to dictate your reputation or break your ethical code by putting your own emotional, personal perspective on a session. That's again where I've had to do a lot of damage control for other mediums or other psychics that have caused emotional damage because these people are in emotionally vulnerable situations. Okay. What if you sit down with somebody and you don't feel like you are getting any messages? That's a fun one. This is where you, again, want to do world's fastest meditation and clear both yourself and your space. The more that you relax your mind and body, the more you will be able to pick up on messages more clearly for your client. Remember, our whole body is actually a receptacle for information, not just up here, not just our heart. The whole thing can pick up messages if you're relaxed enough to get them and you're clear enough to get them. Okay. All right. Homework. Practice, practice, practice. I feel like I put that every time. Oh, wait, I do. Practice reading the cards, building your self-faith. That's so important. Remember your confidence log for any of the little things that you get so that way you are tracking your progress. All the homework I give, this is for you. This is for you to build yourself up. So obviously it's up to you if you want to do it, but I suggest it. So I only suggest homework so that it really helps you improve. And then make sure that you do, if you're going to do readings for people, that they're like the little mini readings, try to have fun with it. Okay. The whole point is to have fun. So continue practice, again, feeling your emotions and intuitive feelings from your cards and abilities. Feeling. This is where you're getting this. Our intuition and our psychic abilities are highly linked to the word feel. And remember, stress and anxiety are psychic ability killers. The more pressure you put on yourself to do a reading, the harder it's going to be to do it. So you got to breathe. You got to have fun. You got to enjoy it. You got to relax and realize you have a gift for a reason and let it flow. All right. So week 7 finale. Next week is spirit readings using the breadcrumb trail. We're really going to dig into how to talk to ghosts. Woo! So next week I will teach you more on mediumship, plus how to use the tree of energy links and the breadcrumb trail methods. These are 2 methods that I have developed over the years and years that have done this that have been absolutely invaluable to not only myself, but to all of my students that I've taught. Anybody that I've been working with before that has worked with the breadcrumb trail knows what I'm talking about. So next week's going to be really fun because I'm actually going to teach you how to connect with the spirit in the room. Okay. So I'm going to close out of this now and come back into class with everybody. Hi. Okay. Does anybody have any questions? I know I kind of burned right through that. So Lori, go ahead. Oh, you got to be
like when you're drawing the cards, do you have your deck face up so you can see the pictures, or turned over so you don't see the pictures?
Oh, good question. I turn it down. I turn it down. I turn it down.
Okay, so you're not seeing.
I put it face down so that you see the top of the cards, not the bottom, because you're not reading this card.
Right.
So I always just draw, like I draw from the top and flip, draw from the top and flip.
And you don't shuffle in between, right? In between parts. Okay, got it.
No, because once you've shuffled, you're good. So,
okay.
Yes, no, that's a good question. I didn't think about that. I think I'm on autopilot with reading cards at this point. So again, done it for a long time. Okay, does anybody else have a question on how this works? Or yes, Rebecca.
So I had kind of an interesting situation. I am in my work office and not my home office. So I forgot I have a whole bunch of decks and all that kind of stuff. So I took some Post-it notes and I drew little images on them.
Oh, bless your heart.
I was like this, but it was really funny when I was creating it. I was thinking about, I was like, oh, if my friend Rachel was here right now, I would, or no, if I still had that deck that I was borrowing that she's creating, I could take it from my bag. And then my phone was here and she popped in and sent a message at the same time, but it was, which was really cool.
That's ironic.
It was like magic. But at the same time, I closed my eyes and I saw a heart, and then it was sideways, and then it brought me then my intuition was someone suffering from a broken heart, and then it brought me into somebody, like I'm at my school, and so I was like, oh, it's one of my students. They have a really broken heart right now.
Oh, listen to you go.
And then when I flipped the card, it was a star. And that's when my phone went beep, and it was my friend Rachel. And I was like, oh, weird. Of course. So I had it was almost like 2 things intuiting at the same time.
That can happen.
Yeah. I just wanted to ask your opinion on that, or what your thoughts are on it.
So that's one of the reasons when we are working with our clients or sitters or friends or whoever it is we're reading for, that's one of the reasons we clear ourselves and we clear our space. And then that's why we want to energetically connect with the person that's there. Because you could be in a room full of 2,000 people. And if you're trying to read for one person and you start picking up on everybody, you have to learn how to separate that. So that's the reason when we do this, you want to definitely just focus your energy on connecting with the person that you're reading for. Okay.
Yeah.
And you kind of have to block out the background noise sometimes. Like you said, you were able to identify that you were picking up on somebody else. At that point, it's okay to tell the universe, I'm not reading for that person right now. Because as soon as you do that, you energetically push that this way. Okay. Or whichever direction it is at,
Yeah.
So you do want to make sure that you keep them separated, because when I have when I have my office, like I'm at a home office now, so people just have to wait for me outside. But when I had my office before and people would sit outside my door waiting for me, sometimes their people would try to jump into the session that I was still in. And I would have to tell their people, I'm sorry, but you're not here for this session. You're early. So you're going to have to come back at your appointment time. So it sounds silly and sounds kind of like you're talking to yourself, but you really do want to make sure, all joking aside, that you have that air of separation, that you are only connected with the person or people that you're directly working with.
Yeah.
And that if you sense something else, you kick that out the door for right then.
Yeah.
But I'm proud of you that you could identify the differences between the two. Kudos.
Well, it's all these tools that are just absolutely extraordinary. But yeah, and I think also for me, what I didn't do is I was so distracted by making a mini pretend deck that I didn't have a focus person. I didn't have a focus. Yeah. So then when I was doing it, then I was having the energy of this building, and then the powerful, magical friend who does this all the time. And so she came like the person, and you're, like you said, outside the office door, and then came right into whatever I was doing. But I didn't have that focus on that one person.
Yeah. And that will help. And that's one of the reasons, like when you're trying to do, so the reason I walked you guys through doing a self reading today is because it's testing a couple of things for you. Okay. It's not just, I'm trying to get you to do your own reading, because honestly, who else are you going to read for today? I could have had you focus on a friend. All right. But the best way to do this to get some experience under your belt is to try to learn how to separate yourself away from you. The reason I wanted you to practice with doing self readings is because the more you learn how to separate yourself from you and your emotional state, the better your readings are going to be. So like I said, there's a madness to my methods. There's a method to my madness, all the above, because some of the little things I teach you to do actually have that big of an actual skill base that comes to back it up. And so it is a tool to be able to move yourself away from your own emotional state. It's a tool, and it's a practiced tool. Okay. And so by being able to do that and then turn around and read for yourself, you are actually training your brain and your midbrain to separate from your own emotions to do a reading. See? So I do want you guys to practice doing a self-reading, and you can print off like 500 of these if you want to just have a cheat sheet. You don't have to look at the bottom. I just put 5 cards on there for fun. So, but practice those self-readings so that you can learn how to do the separation. That way, when you sit down to read for a friend, you will also notice that you'll have the ability to pull away from your emotional connection with them. Because if you're reading while you're emotionally on a personal level attached to somebody, it's going to skew your sessions. If you're reading for somebody and you've managed to say, no, this is just a client. So my way of doing it, which I guess I should share, is just to look at somebody and say, no, I'm the professional. This is professional Jen. Okay. This is not emotional Jen. Jen is the vessel. Jen is referring to herself a lot in the third person. So basically I see myself as the vessel, and we are the messengers. We are here. We're like a telephone. We're like an antiquated cell phone. that doesn't have as great a reception as everybody else's, but it's the only option we have at the moment to help connect with spirit. And it really, truly, when you can learn how to do this and learn how to separate yourself, not only can you read people to help them, but you can actually read for people that come to you because of those heightened emotional states. How many of you have ever had a reading? Why did you go get it? Think about that for a second. I can't, Teresa?
I had a question. I was wondering about something.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
That's why. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's when you have had a reading, you went because you had a situation that you could not necessarily figure out on your own and you needed guidance, right? And so that's why we have guides. That's why people that can connect with spirit, that can connect with guides, have the ability to talk to people's guides that are not connecting properly. So that's why hopefully I can spread the message through the world and everybody can learn to connect on their own. Teach a man to fish instead of giving him a fish. So, but we've all gone to somebody seeking help before. But when we do that, we're usually in an emotional state over at least maybe a situation or needing help for something. So that's why when we do our delivery too, when you are delivering messages, sometimes it's just cut and dry. Here's what it is. You gotta trust those instincts to decide if a cut and dry is how you want to deliver something, or if there needs to be a little emotional padding behind it. Okay, so you almost, in a sense, become a counselor / life coach and death coach. By communicating with the other side, you are kind of working with them to help them heal too, or help them get their messages across to help your sitter heal. So I'm going to stop my tangent now. Anyways, so does anybody else have any other questions before we get going? All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining me again today. You are all fabulous and I love you all. And I'm excited that everybody's learning so much and I can't wait for next week. Good to talk to dead people.
See you
You're
next week.
welcome. See you next week. Bye.
Bye-bye.